Hey everyone, it's Mike Andes, and you're listening to the Business Bootcamp podcast. And today we're talking about the 5 things that this recession should be teaching small business owners. What can we learn from all this craziness that's been going on? What can we learn from it? And how can we make our businesses better after all of this? Before we get into today's show, speaking of making your business better, I really encourage you to check out gusto.com/bootcamp to try out 90 days free their software where you can pay your employees and give them benefits in a very transparent manner. They have a dashboard where they can see their pay, all the taxes being taken out, as well as you can get them 401k match benefits, as well as education benefits and health benefits. Really, really great software. Check it out today. Go to gusto.com/bootcamp. Now, today I'm talking about something that really is close to my heart because it's stuff I've had to learn over the past 3 to 4 months. Literally, March 16th, 2020 was kind of a big turning point for me in my career, I believe. And that is because it was the first time that I was really, really impacted by an economic movement. 2008, 2007, 2006, all of that happening, I was not involved in the market like I am now. I didn't have franchisees. I didn't have businesses of my own. I didn't have money in the stock market. I didn't have houses back then. So it really didn't affect me. I was young at that time. I was going through college. As a college student, it was in the news, but not really relevant to me. And so now as I go through it, March 16th was just it went from 0 to 60 very, very quickly because literally in the matter of a couple hours, we had to shut down the gym. And then literally within a matter of a couple weeks, we went massive amounts of decline of new projects across our system at Augusta Lawn Care and all the franchisees. And so I had to learn a lot of the things I'm going to talk about today by trial and fire. A lot of the things that I've been working with let's say lots of tens, maybe 80 business owners very closely to try to help them in their businesses over the past 3 months, ones that are really, really struggling. And these are the 5 things that I'm taking away, that I'm learning from going through this. We've been very, very fortunate and blessed, and I'm very thankful that we're going to come out on the other side of this in my businesses stronger than we were before, financially, as well as our team, as well as what we've learned and the systems and stuff that we've created. We're going to become better because of this. I'm very fortunate and blessed to do that, and I don't take any pride in that whatsoever. We've just been very blessed because I know there's a lot of people that's not the case, and it wasn't to no fault of their own. This is just, no one expected this, but what can we learn from this? And that's what I encourage you to really be thinking about, whether you're going into this recession and not knowing what's happening, or whether you're kind of just coming out of it now, you're back being able to open up, or if you're in the middle of it. We still haven't opened the gym. We've been closed. We're going to be closed over 3 months. And so that can be really hurtful to a lot of small business owners if you have to close your doors, if your traffic has been dramatically decreased, if you all of a sudden had to change the way you did business and it's more expensive. These are all things that have completely changed the game. And these are the 5 things I've learned. Number 1 is don't rest on your laurels. And I don't just mean be slack or just be lazy. I don't think most small business owners are that way. I mean, stay on the cutting edge of your industry. Let's learn about your industry, learn about the trends, learn about what's happening, learn about who's blazing a trail, who's creating new systems and better ways of doing things and better standard operating procedures, and be constantly improving. Don't rest on your laurels. Someone that had a one-trick pony going into this whole virus and economic meltdown, they were the ones who really lost out and are really being tested right now. The people that were able to adapt, switch, change, had really educated themselves in their industry and what they could do and what the market and their industry where they were moving. Those are the people who are winning throughout all of this. Number 2 is technology is moving faster than most small businesses. I've learned this like none other than the past 3 months, that technology is just taking over and we cannot just bury our heads in the sand and I really encourage people to embrace the technology instead of being naive and be like, oh, I don't want to learn it, or I'm not good at it, or I didn't grow up with it. Well, guess what? Like, the companies that are coming out of this stronger are the ones that had great technology. You look at the big stocks that rebounded so fast and really didn't even go down much during the coronavirus. Amazon, Facebook, they're all doing better because of this, because it's forcing us to go towards technology. Because technology is more scalable, the infrastructure is much more cheap, it's much more cost effective than building stores. It's much cheaper to have the infrastructure once it's built out, like Amazon has, to deliver those things and not have employees be manning a till, but just have a cashier, no cash being transacted, just be a credit card on a website. These are all things that are very important. And the companies that are winning after all of this are technology companies. This is going to only accelerate the movement of society onto technology. And more importantly, it's going to take where the money's at in our economy, which is the baby boomer market, and it forced them to adapt to that technology and get an Amazon Prime membership and figure out how to use Uber and download things on their phone and check out online and order groceries to their door. These are all things that just a year or two ago would have been cutting edge, but for them, they just kind of pushed aside. Well, guess what? Now the people who have the wealth of our country, they've had to figure out technology, and now you've got to make sure you're positioned to take advantage of that and make sure you are not going to be left behind. The fact that Amazon and Facebook and all these other companies bounce so quickly and are going to come out very, very strong on the other side of this is a very clear indication that small business owners need to have a CRM. You've got to be able to accept credit cards online. You need to be able to have an effective email and social media campaign for marketing. These are things that are just so important, and it's become very, very clear over the past few months. And maybe you don't like social media. Maybe you don't like creating websites or educating yourself about SEO or figuring out how to take advantage of technology to not have customers come into your store or to deliver more effectively or more time efficiently. Whatever it might be, maybe you don't like it. But if you can't beat them, join them. If you can't beat Amazon at the game they're playing of one-day delivery, join them. And that is, get your website going, get an e-commerce running, figure out a way to use cloud software instead of an old desktop where you can only run payments on this one computer where there's software installed. Like, get on the cloud. It scales. It's accessible anywhere. These are things we've got to be thinking about, and we should have and should be learning throughout this economic contraction. Number 3 is you got to consistently be asking yourself, and this is something I talked about at Landscape Summit last year, what would wipe me out? What could wipe me out? What could happen hypothetically in the environment or in health or in politics? What could wipe me out? And really being able to be very open and honest with yourself and be like, there's certain areas in my business that I am weak and I need to protect against in the case of a virus or a political uprising or protests like we're seeing now or an economic contraction or a shift in the housing market or the population in my local market diminishes or whatever it might be. These are things you've got to think about. What's going to happen now with this whole virus and people mass migrating out of big cities towards the suburbs? This is something to be thinking about. This is something we're really keeping an eye on with Augusta Lawn Care Services because the suburbs is where we make our money. And because we are going after people with grass, not with people in a skyscraper. So if people are going to become, the distribution of population becomes wider, we're going to be able to benefit from that as the suburbs grow, as people move away from high-rise buildings and into a lot with lawn and with property maintenance needs. These are things we got to be thinking about, though. What is going to wipe me out? What is the next environmental crisis that could happen? For example, I'm thinking about the same way that I just mentioned a positive. What about the negative? An environmental could wipe us out is what if we go into a drought across the entire country for 3 months? What if there is, some massive event that literally from an environmental standpoint is completely never seen before? What could wipe us out? How would we adapt? Could we change our service offering? How would we handle our customer database? How would we be able to capitalize on those things? These are things you got to be thinking about. Nobody 1 year ago would predict that we would have a virus today and that it would have changed all of our lives, all of our businesses, all of our economics, all of our political structure. And this is just what we have to learn from. We cannot bury our head in the sand. We cannot just say that the coronavirus is a once in a lifetime thing and that we're never going to see anything like it again. Maybe we'll never see a virus like this before. It's probably likely that it's going to become more of a recurring thing, but maybe we don't see the virus, but maybe we see other economic shifts. Maybe we see other things happening that are going to affect your business, and you can't even imagine. I can't even fathom what those things might be because we didn't think about what was going to come in 2020. And so, ask yourself the question, what could wipe me out? How could I take advantage of that? And how could I protect my business if that thing happens, hypothetically? Number 4 is be willing to pivot and change. This is something that boggles my mind, is that some people over the past 3 months have literally been like, you know what? I'm just going to close down and I'm going to open up in a few months and I'm going to go back to normal. Guess what? Things change. You've got to pivot. Just like I talked about a couple weeks ago with the gym, we're closed down and we had to pivot to online virtual training. Has it been wildly successful? Has it made tons of money? No, because there's a ton of competition right now, and every other good gym, as well as companies that have been creating content for years, are already in that space, dominating it. So, but does that mean I'm just like, oh no, I'm just going to stick and just do the same thing? I'm just going to wait till the gym opens and I'm just going to sell gym memberships and in-person training. No, pivot, change, realize I got to embrace technology. I got to embrace the fact that we're not going to open those doors for a long time and that some people are going to be afraid to come back. And we've got to change. We've got to pivot. We've got to figure out virtual training. We've got to figure out how to use Zoom. And we've got to figure out how to do all of these things virtually that in the past we would have weighed people. We would have held their hand while they were doing balance moves. We would have been able to do so much more in person. How do we change? How do we pivot? And you've got to be willing to do that. It's a mindset of flexibility. If you're so set in what you're doing all the time, you're never going to be able to adapt, and you're never going to be able to change, and you're never going to be able to take opportunity when these massive shifts happen. The people who are winning and are going to take advantage of what's happening right now are the people who are willing to change, willing to adapt, nimble, and literally within 24 hours can make a decision to go in a completely different direction. They're the ones who are going to win. Be willing to adapt, be willing to pivot, and be willing to change your business model. Number 5, the 5th thing that you've got to learn from this whole recession and everything we've been going through for the past few months is do not over-leverage with expectation that everything will continue the same way they always have. Because guess what? They're not going to continue the same way they always have. There's going to eventually be a recession. There's going to eventually be some sort of business hardship. And it might not even be a macro political or macroeconomic issue. It might be something like your family member gets injured, or you get some sort of sickness, or a really key employee leaves, or something happens, a competitor moves into your marketplace that is much bigger than you and has funds to wipe you out. These are things that are very, very possible. And I think because we had it good for 12 plus years since 2007, 2008 recession, we kind of got a little bit lazy financially and we were over leveraging ourselves. As small business owners, we were taking debts out. We were mortgaging our house in order to grow the business. And then guess what? One day that changed in the past few months, and now people had too much leverage. They had all this interest expense, and now all of a sudden they aren't growing 30% every single month in their revenues, which was needed and necessary to sustain that level of debt and that loan expense. And so you've got to think financially, like, do I have money to get through a crisis? Do I have the money, cash, reserves? Is my business model profitable enough to be able to take a hit in profitability and still survive? Or are my margins so low that something happening in the economy, in the hiring process, in my team, something happens and just can wipe me out so quickly? Am I that fragile of a business financially where literally if I'm not growing at this same rate every single month, or if I'm not making this great percentage month that I had in terms of profitability every single month, that I'm not going to be able to survive? You've got to build in the fact that there's going to be these issues with the economy. There's going to be times when your business goes through hardships, when there's unforeseen issues in your team, in your marketing, with your employees, your key best employee might leave. Your key best customer might leave that has 30% of your business wrapped up with them. These are things that happen. And if you have not deleveraged and if you're over leveraged during that time, you're going to have a very hard time making sound business decisions simply due to the fact that you are struggling financially. And what I've seen over the past few months is business owners making poor decisions because they are literally drowning financially. It's one thing to be going through an economic crisis or a virus like we're going through right now. It's another thing to have the added pressure of the financial aspect of your business literally going to shreds and you realizing that you over-leveraged, you did not save up for a rainy day. And I encourage people, I'm all about growth and expansion and getting to the next level and investing in hiring and growth. I love that. I love growing my business. But you've got to do it in a very efficient manner. We started our second corporate location for Augusta Lawn Care literally the day that our state went into lockdown. But the reason we were able to do that is because the model from the beginning, when we were getting ready for launch, like buying the equipment and everything, was we're going to be profitable literally within 6 to 10 weeks, and then we're going to stay profitable. We're not going to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're not going to go get a big loan. We're not going to get a big high interest debt. We're not going to use credit cards to buy our trucks and equipment and a big mortgage on a piece of land. That's not how we did it. We started with a little storage facility. We started with one truck. We started very small to make sure it's profitable right from the get. And that's the kind of business model that's going to work when you go through really hard times, is high profit margins, systems oriented, and a good team culture in place. And so these are all things I want you to think about. Number one is do not rest on your laurels. Number two is technology is moving very, very fast. You've got to stay up with it. Number three is ask yourself, what could wipe my business out? Number four, you've got to be willing to pivot and change your business model. And number five is do not over leverage yourself and depend on this ideology that things are going to continue the same way that they always have. You've been listening to Mike Andes on the Business Bootcamp podcast. Until next time, be great. Nothing else pays.